Jocko, from 115, podcast number 115, as a leader, how best to respond to someone like Corporal Meyer when he brings up good questions in a brief that need to be addressed without derailing the brief and calling your competence/authority into question.
Okay, so what he's talking about is on podcast 115 with Dakota Meyer, which if you haven't listened to it, listen to it. It's long and it's very, I don't know, it's awesome. Anyways, in part of that podcast, Dakota is getting told how they're going to conduct this operation, and Dakota raises some points and says, what about this, what about that, and what about this other thing? Mm-hmm. And they don't listen to him. Mm-hmm. And so the question here is, if you're in charge, you're the leader, and you get someone that brings up these questions during a brief, during the plan that need to be addressed, how do you do it? How do you handle that properly? Okay, well, first of all, and the most important part of this is if you involve your team in the planning itself, you won't have these questions come up during the brief. They'll come up during the planning. Mm-hmm. So that's the ultimate and best way to solve this problem. You don't plan in a vacuum as the leader and then present the plan to the troops and expect that you're going to have the perfect plan. It was only your brain working on it. Mm-hmm. What about everyone else's brain? What about everyone else's perspective? They have experience and they have knowledge that you don't have. Mm-hmm. So if you involve them in the planning, then they ask you those questions early and you figure out what the right answers to those questions are. Mm-hmm. So that's how you solve the problem right there. Now, if it happens that for whatever reason you didn't have the opportunity to do that, or you didn't do it well enough, or whatever the case may be, and now you start getting questions on your plan while you're briefing, well, first of all, if they ask you questions that you don't have answers to, then that could indicate that you're wrong, actually. Mm-hmm. You could actually be wrong. Yeah. And not a lot of leaders like to feel that way, but you should actually be happy that someone on your team is pointing out something that is going to make the plan better as a whole. Mm. So there's that. And it's really easy. If you're in a brief and someone brings up a point that you didn't think of and it makes sense, well, then you can implement that into the plan. Okay? So that. Now, you might think that it hurts your authority, right? To say, hey, that's a good point, Echo. I didn't think of that. Let's implement. You might think or feel like that's going to make you look bad, but it's the opposite is actually true. If I go, no, Echo, hey, the plan's already completed. You weren't there for the planning, so just be quiet. That's the guy that no one respects. Yeah. That's the guy that's not looking good as a leader, and that's the person that's losing authority. So you don't look weak if you listen to members of the team, whether they're junior or senior. It also shows that you're incompetent if because you missed a part. Obviously, the question is pertinent that they asked, or I should say, if the question is pertinent and it is a good point, then it shows that you missed an important angle of the plan. So, open your mind, put your ego in check, and incorporate it in there. Now, this can also happen if there's something that you know that you're right on, right? Something that you know that you're right on. If there's something like that, and this, maybe you get one particular individual that keeps pushing back, and you might have to, in those cases, say, you know what? Hey, Echo, let me talk to you after this brief is over, and I'll explain to you exactly why we're doing it this way. So that way it doesn't derail the brief, because it might take a longer explanation than you want to. For instance, the typical SEAL briefing was we try to keep it 50 minutes to an hour. So if you got to spend 8 minutes pulling up a different map and explaining some detail of the terrain to this guy that has a protest to what you're saying, you might say, hey, listen, when we get done with this brief, I'll pull you aside. Let me show you the terrain map, and you can see exactly why we're using this insertion route, or whatever the case may be. So you can do that if you have to. And even then, they might end up having a point that you didn't see, and then you can say, okay, well, I didn't see that, and now we have to give everyone a quick rebriefing on some change in the plan. But again, none of this will happen if you bring your subordinates in and you let them first of all, let them do the planning. That's ideal. Let them come up with a plan, or let Echo come up with a plan. I'm not coming up with a plan. You go come up with a plan. I'm going to check with you and make sure that the plan is going in the right direction, make sure it's not totally off track.
Sure.
And then you'll incorporate all these things, and I'll have a better view of the plan. I can stand back and be the tactical genius, as we talk about in the book, Extreme Ownership. Like, that's how you do it. So that's the answer. Well, that at least is an answer.
Yeah.
Maybe other people have other answers.
Seems to make sense to me. Yeah, that's that hard. It's hard, right? When you it's one of those things you always got to be conscious of when you have a plan or whatever, and someone, for lack of a better term, pokes holes in it, and be like, "Hey, what about this? What about this?" And then you have those two elements that you got to keep in mind, where it's like the fact that it's your plan, and then the plan. You know, the effectiveness of the plan.
You mean your emotional attachment to the plan? Yeah. You got to
exactly.
keep the emotional attachment to the plan in check versus the actual effectiveness of the plan.
Yeah.
And people have a hard time doing that. And what's cool is once you break away from that mindset, then it's really easy just to be, and everyone just kind of knows, oh yeah, Jocko's, he's got an open mind, he'll listen to you.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone that has a closed mind, everyone goes, oh, you can't get anything by this guy.
Yeah.
He's just going to keep, he doesn't even help to point things out because he won't listen. And then guess what? You're using one brain versus 20 brains.
Yeah.
And more important than the brain power, the perspective, the different perspectives. Because the guys on the ground are the guys with the technical knowledge and the tactical knowledge. They're going to know things that you don't know. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
You can't know everything that they know.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you shut down all those different perspectives, you're looking at something from one angle.
Yep.
And do you see the whole complete picture when you only look at something from one angle? No, you don't.
No, sir.
Use those other perspectives.
Yep.
Check.
Self-correcting machine. If
Yes.
you can let go of the ego, the taking it personal, the personal attachment.
When I was in the SEAL teams, I called it the emotional attachment to the plan.
Yeah.
Because I'd see these people come up with plans and they would be so addicted to their own plan only because it was their own plan. Not for any tactical or strategic or operational reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
They just liked it because they thought of it.
Yeah. That's natural.
Yeah. It's very natural.
Yeah.
And there's some element of benefit to that, right? Because if you're passionate about your plan and I'm passionate about my plan, as long as we can eventually come to compromise, then we've put forth the best idea. Because I don't want you to not be passionate about your plan while you're planning it. I want you to really come up with the best plan that you really believe in.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you talk about poking holes, right? Poking holes in the plan. And we all know that it's very easy to sit back and poke holes in the plan. Yeah. And what I'm telling you to do as a leader is to absolutely do that. Not be a jerk. No. And I'm talking as a leader. If I let you do the planning, then it's easy for me to sit back and poke holes in the plan, which is good. It's good because we're going to fill those holes.
Yeah.
Once I poke the holes, we're going to fill them and we're going to know that they're taken care of. Also, as a leader, from a perspective point, you think, hey, Jocko really knows what's going on. He was able to find these holes in the plan. The real reason I was able to find them is just because I was not totally at minuscule detail with the plan. You were. I was up at altitude, relaxing, looking around.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't want to say cheating. It's not cheating, but
it is cheating. It is cheating. It is cheating. It's that much easier. It's so much easier to sit back and do it.
Yeah,
and let things go that way.
Like when you watch a movie and you have like some critique, the movie's outstanding, and then you have some critique. Yeah, they shouldn't have chose that guy for that role or whatever. Meanwhile, the movie is like groundbreaking, whatever. So it's easy to poke holes in the movie. Meanwhile, like when it's done, you're all like poking holes at the little imperfections. Do that all the time. Makes sense. I dig it.
Does that happen with your videos? Is that what I'm saying?
Probably.
Check.